The crimson sand of Veltar Prime absorbed another drop of Kithara's blue blood as she pressed her back against the jagged rock formation. Her breathing came in sharp gasps, each exhale sending pain shooting through her broken ribs. The ceremonial spear of her ancestors lay in 3 pieces at her feet, its ancient metal finally succumbing to the relentless assault of the Drakmor war machines. Around her, the bodies of her fallen warriors created a grim circle in the desert. 23 of the finest Veltarian fighters, each one worth 100 ordinary soldiers, now fed the hungry sands with their life essence. She was the last. Commander Kithara Velnash, defender of the sacred grove, guardian of the last seed vault on her dying world. The thunderous footsteps of the approaching Drakmor assault mechs shook loose rocks from the cliff face above. Each step brought them closer to victory, closer to claiming the genetic treasures that would allow them to terraform 1,000 worlds in their image. The seed vault behind her contained the biological heritage of over 50 extinct species, the last hope for biodiversity in this sector of the galaxy. Kithara's comm unit crackled with static before her sister's voice broke through. "Kith, the orbital defense grid is down. We cannot hold them any longer. You must destroy the vault before they reach it." The words hit harder than any Drakmor weapon. Destroy the vault meant destroying the future. It meant accepting that the Drakmor had won, that their philosophy of conquest and consumption would spread unchecked across the stars. Her people had fought for 3 generations to protect these seeds, believing that one day they could restore the worlds the Drakmor had stripped bare. Negative, Scylla. As long as I draw breath, the vault remains intact. Kithara checked her energy rifle's power cell, 12% remaining. Against an entire Drakmor battalion, it might as well have been empty. The first assault mech rounded the bend, its bulk blocking out the twin suns. Standing 30 feet tall and armed with plasma cannons that could level buildings, it represented everything the Drakmor Empire stood for. Raw power without conscience, strength without wisdom. Its pilot, likely a young Drakmor warrior eager for glory, would see only another primitive alien standing between him and promotion. Kithara raised her rifle and fired. The energy bolt struck the mech's chest plate and dissipated harmlessly. The pilot's laughter echoed through the external speakers. "Surrender, little Veltarian. Your world is already ours. Your cities burn. Your fleets are scattered to the void. Give us the vault codes, and we will grant you a quick death." More mechs emerged from behind the first, their weapons trained on her position. She counted 8, then 12, then stopped counting. The Drakmor had brought enough firepower to crack a moon against one wounded alien with a nearly depleted rifle. "The codes died with my warriors," she lied, clutching the control pendant hidden beneath her armor. One press would seal the vault forever, but it would also trigger the emergency beacon. Someone, somewhere, might receive the signal, might remember that the Veltarians had tried to preserve life in a galaxy increasingly dominated by those who sought only to consume it. The lead mech's plasma cannon began to glow with deadly energy. "Then you die for nothing, alien. Your precious seeds will feed our terraforming engines, just like the forests of Kepler 442 and the coral reefs of New Pacifica." Kithara closed her eyes and thought of the grove where she had played as a child, where her grandmother had taught her the names of every tree, every flower, every creature that called it home. All gone now, reduced to ash by Drakmor industrial ships. But perhaps if the seeds survived, another child might someday play beneath similar trees on a distant world. The plasma cannon fired. The bolt should have reduced her to atoms. Instead, it struck an energy shield that materialized from nowhere, scattering harmless light across the rock face. Kithara's eyes snapped open to see a figure descending from the sky on wings of blue flame. The newcomer wore armor unlike anything she had ever seen, sleek and organic-looking, as if it had been grown rather than manufactured. The figure landed between Kythera and the mechs with impossible grace, the impact creating a small crater in the sand. When he turned to look at her, she saw a face that was almost familiar, almost like her own people, but different. The bone structure was similar, the eyes held the same intelligence, but there was something else there. Something that made her warrior instincts sing with recognition. "Sorry I'm late," the stranger said in perfect Veltarian, though his accent was strange, ancient somehow. Traffic was murder getting through the Drakmor blockade. The lead mech pilot's voice carried a note of confusion. "Unknown contact! Identify yourself immediately or be destroyed!" The stranger reached over his shoulder and drew a weapon that made Kythera's broken spear look like a child's toy. It hummed with contained energy, reality seeming to bend around its edges. When he spoke again, his voice carried across the battlefield with absolute authority. "I am Marcus Chen, 1st Expeditionary Force, Terran Confederation, and you are trespassing on protected territory." The name meant nothing to the Drakmor, but something stirred in Kythera's genetic memory. Terran, Earth. The mythical origin world mentioned in the oldest songs, the place from which all humanoid life had supposedly spread across the galaxy eons ago. But that was legend, wasn't it? The homeworld had been lost to time and space, its location forgotten. Terran? The mech pilot's voice held disbelief and growing fear. Impossible. The Terra worlds were destroyed in the first expansion wars. You're extinct. Marcus Chen smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. "Reports of our death have been greatly exaggerated. Now you have exactly 30 seconds to withdraw from this system before I demonstrate why the Drakmor Empire used to send tribute fleets to Sol." The mechs opened fire as one, plasma bolts and missile swarms converging on the lone figure. Marcus moved like liquid lightning, his strange weapon carving through the air in patterns that seemed to defy physics. Energy shields flared around him, each one shaped differently, each one perfectly positioned to deflect the incoming fire. He launched himself at the nearest mech with a leap that carried him 50 feet through the air. His weapon pierced the machine's armor like paper, and the 30-foot war machine collapsed in a shower of sparks and metal fragments. Before the pilot could eject, Marcus had already moved on to the next target. Kythera watched in amazement as a single being systematically dismantled an entire Drakmor battalion. His movements were economical, precise, wasteful of neither energy nor motion. Each strike was perfectly calculated, each defensive maneuver exactly what was needed and nothing more. It was the most beautiful display of combat efficiency she had ever witnessed. In less than 5 minutes, 12 assault mechs lay in ruins around the battlefield. Marcus stood among the wreckage, not even breathing hard, his weapon humming quietly at his side. The few surviving Drakmor pilots crawled from their destroyed machines, hands raised in surrender. "The vault is secure," he said, turning back to Kythera. "Though I'm afraid I arrived too late to save your warriors. For that, I apologize. They fought with honor." Kythera struggled to her feet, leaning heavily on the rock wall for support. "Who are you? How did you know we were here? The Terra worlds are legend, myth, stories told to children." Marcus smiled again, but this time it was warm, almost familial. "We never left Kythera Velnash. We've been watching, waiting, preparing. Your people's call for help reached us decades ago, but the Drakmor expansion forced us to be careful in our response." "Decades ago? But we only activated the emergency beacon today." "Your grandmother activated it 67 years ago, during the first Drakmor raids. We've been working our way here ever since, liberating systems, building alliances, preparing for this moment." He gestured to the ruined mechs around them. "The Drakmor Empire's expansion ends here, today." As if summoned by his words, the sky above them filled with ships. Not the brutal angular vessels of the Drakmor, but sleek craft that seemed to flow through the atmosphere like living things. Hundreds of them, each one barren. The medical bay aboard the Terran ship Prometheus felt more like a garden than a military vessel. Soft bioluminescent panels provided gentle lighting, while the air carried the scent of growing things. Kithara lay in a healing pod that resembled a flower bud, watching her wounds close with technology that seemed like magic. Her broken ribs knitted themselves back together while synthetic tissue replaced what she had lost. Marcus stood beside the pod, his armor replaced by simple clothes that somehow made him seem more human and more alien at the same time. Through the transparent walls, she could see her homeworld below, but it looked different. Green patches were spreading across the desert, where Drakmor industrial complexes had once stood. The atmosphere itself seemed clearer, more alive. "How is this possible?" she asked, watching forests literally grow where there had been wasteland hours before. "The Drakmor stripped this world bare 50 years ago. It should take centuries to restore the ecosystem." "We've had a long time to perfect terraforming technology," Marcus replied. "Not the Drakmor way, which involves burning everything and starting over. We learned to work with existing systems, to heal rather than replace. Every world they damaged, we can fix. Every species they drove to extinction, we can bring back from genetic samples like those in your vault." The healing pod opened with a soft hiss, and Kithara sat up, testing her newly repaired body. The pain was gone, but more than that, she felt stronger than before. "What did you do to me?" "Enhanced your natural healing systems, nothing invasive, just helped your body remember how to repair itself properly. It's a gift we learned to share with our allies." Marcus gestured toward the observation deck. "Would you like to see what we've been building while the galaxy forgot about us?" The observation deck offered a spectacular view of space above Veltar Prime. What Kithara saw there made her legs weak with awe. A massive structure hung in orbit, easily the size of a small moon, but it pulsed with organic curves and flowing lines. Docking bays opened like flower petals to receive ships, while energy conduits ran along its surface like veins carrying lifeblood. "We call it Haven Station," Marcus said. "One of 12 we've built in this sector alone. Each one is home to about 50 million beings from races the Drakmor thought they had destroyed." As Kithara watched, the docking bay nearest them opened to receive a ship unlike any in her experience. It was clearly of Veltarian design, but enhanced, improved, made magnificent in ways she could hardly comprehend. The hull gleamed with living metal that shifted and flowed like liquid mercury, and the engine signatures showed power outputs that dwarfed anything her people had ever built. "That's the Veltarian ship restoration," Marcus explained, noting her stare. "Captain Thara Velnash commands her." "Velnash?" Kithara's voice caught in her throat. "But that's my family name. My grandmother's sister disappeared during the first Drakmor raids. We thought she was dead. She was captured, along with 12,000 other Veltarians from the outer colonies. We intercepted the Drakmor slave ships and brought them to safety. They've been working with us ever since, helping to prepare for this day." The implications hit Kithara like a physical blow. All these years her people had mourned their lost while fighting a desperate holding action. But the lost weren't dead. They were out here, not just surviving but thriving, building something magnificent in the darkness between stars. A chime announced an incoming message, and a holographic figure materialized beside them. The woman was clearly Veltarian, but her bearing spoke of confidence and authority that Kithara had rarely seen. When she spoke, her voice carried the unmistakable accent of the outer colonies. "Great niece," the figure said, and Kithara's heart stopped. "I've waited 67 years to see you again. Permission to come aboard?" "Granted," Marcus said before Kithara could find her voice. "Docking Bay 7 is clear." As the hologram faded, Cathara turned to Marcus with questions burning in her eyes. Why didn't you contact us sooner? Why let us think they were dead? Why let us fight alone for so long? Marcus was quiet for a long moment, watching the restoration dock with practiced precision. Because the Drakmor couldn't be allowed to know what we were doing. If they had discovered our presence too early, before we were ready, they would have called in the full Imperial fleet. This entire sector would have been sterilized. He turned to face her, and she saw something ancient and patient in his eyes. Humanity has learned many hard lessons over the millennia. One of them is that sometimes the only way to save everyone is to let some people think they're fighting alone until the moment you can guarantee victory. Your people's sacrifice bought us the time we needed to prepare. How long have you been preparing? For this campaign? About 200 years. For the war against the Drakmor Empire? Much longer. Marcus smiled grimly. You see, humanity has been dealing with species like the Drakmor for a very long time. They're not unique. Across the galaxy, there are perhaps a dozen species that follow the same pattern. Expand, consume, destroy, move on. We call them the Devourers. The docking bay doors opened, and Captain Thera Velnash strode onto the observation deck. She was older than in the hologram, her blue skin marked with the ritual scars of a veteran warrior, but her eyes held the same fierce intelligence that ran in their bloodline. Without hesitation, she pulled Cathara into an embrace that spoke of decades of grief and hope. You look like your mother, Thara said when they finally separated. She would be proud to see what you've become. The reports of your last stand are already spreading throughout the resistance networks. Resistance networks? Cathara looked between her great-aunt and Marcus. How many worlds are involved in this? Show her, Marcus said to Thera. Thera activated a holographic display that filled the observation deck with a three-dimensional map of the local galactic arm. Red markers showed Drakmor-controlled systems, a spreading cancer that had consumed hundreds of worlds. But scattered throughout the red, hidden like secret fires, were blue markers. And there were far more blue markers than red ones. Every blue marker represents a world or system where we've been secretly building resistance cells, evacuation networks, or hidden colonies, Thara explained. The Veltarians weren't the only ones who got that first escape ship out before their worlds fell. We've been gathering survivors for decades, building a coalition, preparing for the day when we could strike back. Cathara studied the map, her mind reeling from the implications. The blue markers weren't random. They formed a pattern, a network that nearly surrounded the Drakmor expansion. You've been encircling them? For 40 years, Marcus confirmed. Every world they conquered, we evacuated the best and brightest before the final assault. Every species they thought they had destroyed, we preserved in hidden enclaves. We let them think they were winning while we built the infrastructure to ensure their defeat. But why reveal yourselves now? Why not continue the hidden war? Thara and Marcus exchanged a look that spoke of shared knowledge and grim purpose. Because yesterday, our deep space monitors detected something that changes everything, Marcus said. The Drakmor aren't just expanding randomly anymore. They're building something massive in the galactic core, something that our xenoarchaeology teams think might be a weapon capable of sterilizing entire star systems simultaneously. The map zoomed in to show the galactic core, where a massive structure was taking shape among the ancient stars. It dwarfed even Haven Station, its construction clearly visible as it consumed entire asteroid belts for raw materials. They call it the final harvest, Thara said quietly. Intelligence reports suggest they plan to use it to strip every world in the galaxy of biological matter, then reshape everything according to their vision. No more diversity, no more evolution, no more life developing along its own path. Just endless copies of Drakmor industrial worlds. Cathara felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. So this isn't just about saving our individual worlds. This is about the future of all life in the galaxy. Now you understand why we've been so careful, so patient, Marcus said. We couldn't afford to lose. There won't be a second chance if we fail. Through the observation windows, more ships were arriving, vessels from dozens of different species, each one enhanced with technology that made them magnificent instruments of liberation. Fighter squadrons danced between capital ships in formations that spoke of unity and shared purpose. It was the largest fleet Kithara had ever seen, and it was still growing. The Battle of Veltar Prime was just the beginning, Marcus continued. Tomorrow, we begin the systematic liberation of every world the Drakmor have conquered. We'll give them the same choice they gave everyone else: surrender unconditionally or be destroyed. And if they choose to fight? Marcus looked out at the growing fleet, his expression hard as space itself. Then we'll show them what happens when someone threatens the cradle of galactic civilization. Humanity didn't survive this long by being the council chamber aboard Haven Station, defied every expectation Kithara had about military planning facilities. Instead of sterile metal and harsh lighting, organic curves embraced representatives from over 40 different species. Living walls pulsed with data streams while the floor itself displayed real-time tactical information from across the galaxy. At the center, a massive holographic projection showed the entire local galactic arm, with Drakmor positions marked in red and allied forces in blue. Kithara took her place beside Thara at the Veltarian delegation table, still struggling to process the scope of what she was seeing. Crystalline beings that sparkled like living diamonds sat beside aquatic species in mobile water tanks. Insectoid representatives clicked and chirped in harmony with mammalian delegates whose fur changed color with their emotions. All of them bore the marks of war, the signs of species that had been pushed to the brink and survived. But it was the human delegation that commanded the room's attention. Marcus stood at the center podium, but he was flanked by representatives who were clearly from different human colonies. Their clothing, their modifications, even their basic physiology showed the divergent paths humanity had taken across the stars. 3 days ago, the liberation of Veltar Prime began the final phase of Operation Restoration, Marcus announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the chamber. Today, I'm pleased to report that Phase 1 objectives have been exceeded. 17 Drakmor systems have surrendered without resistance. 23 others have been liberated by coalition forces. The Drakmor military command is in complete disarray. Cheers erupted from dozens of different vocal types, creating a symphony of celebration that made the chamber's walls pulse with sympathetic harmonics. But Marcus raised his hand for silence, his expression remaining serious. However, our intelligence networks report that the Drakmor Imperator has accelerated construction of the final harvest weapon. Our xenoarchaeology teams believe it will be operational within 72 hours. The celebration died instantly. Every being in the chamber understood what that meant. No matter how many Drakmor worlds they liberated, if that weapon came online, it could sterilize the entire galactic arm in a matter of days. Admiral Sarah Chen, Marcus's sister and commander of the Terran Deep Strike Fleet, stepped forward to address the assembly. Where Marcus was patient and diplomatic, Sarah radiated the controlled aggression of a career warrior. Her augmented body showed the modifications that allowed humans to survive the stresses of advanced space combat, but her eyes held the same ancient wisdom that seemed to run in their family. The final harvest is located in the galactic core, surrounded by the most heavily fortified star system in Drakmor space, she said. 12 planets have been converted into weapons platforms. The system contains over 2,000 capital ships and enough automated defenses to stop a conventional fleet 10 times our size. A representative from the Zephyrian Collective, her crystalline form chiming with distress harmonics, raised a limb. Then we cannot reach it in time. The weapon will activate before any conventional assault force can fight through those defenses. Sarah smiled, and it was not a reassuring expression. Who said anything about conventional? The holographic display shifted to show a detailed schematic of the galactic core system. As the assembled delegates watched, blue markers began appearing throughout the display, not approaching from outside the defenses, but already inside them. For the past 15 years, we've been infiltrating the core system, Sarah explained. Every construction worker, every supply ship, every maintenance crew that the Drakmor thought they were controlling included our people. We haven't been planning to fight through their defenses. We've been planning to turn their defenses against them. A Veltarian officer that Kithara didn't recognize stood up from the tactical section. Admiral Chen, the infiltration teams report that they've gained access to the Final Harvest's primary control systems. They're ready to begin the sabotage operation on your command. Excellent, Commander Velkoth. Signal all infiltration teams to begin Phase 2 operations immediately. Kithara watched in amazement as the display showed Drakmor defensive positions throughout the core system beginning to change from red to blue. Weapons platforms turned their guns away from space and toward other Drakmor installations. Supply depots exploded in carefully coordinated chain reactions. The mighty fortress system that had taken the Drakmor decades to build was tearing itself apart from within. But even with the defenses neutralized, we still have the problem of the Final Harvest itself, Marcus said, taking control of the briefing again. The weapon is too large and too well protected for conventional sabotage. It will require a direct assault by our most advanced forces. The display zoomed in to show the Final Harvest in detail. The weapon was truly massive, easily the size of a small moon, its surface bristling with defensive systems and energy collectors that drew power from the galactic core's radiation. At its center, a massive focusing array pointed toward the outer rim where most galactic civilization existed. The assault force will consist of volunteers only, Sarah announced. The mission profile indicates a 97% casualty rate among attacking forces. Even with our technological advantages, this will essentially be a suicide mission. Kithara stood up before she fully realized what she was doing. I volunteer. Thera grabbed her arm. Niece, you've already sacrificed enough. Let others carry this burden. No, Kithara said firmly, pulling free. My warriors died protecting a seed vault. If that weapon activates, every seed, every genetic sample, every hope for the future dies with it. This is exactly the kind of fight they would want me to finish. Around the chamber, other representatives began standing. The Zephyrian Collective's delegate chimed her agreement. A massive Ursican warrior roared his willingness to die for the cause. One by one, every species represented in the chamber volunteered their finest warriors for what everyone understood would be a final, desperate gamble. Marcus watched the volunteers with something that might have been pride. Very well. All volunteers will report to Admiral Chen for mission briefing and equipment assignment. Launch is in 18 hours. As the council session broke up, Kithara found herself approached by a human she hadn't met before. He was younger than Marcus and Sarah, but his body showed even more extensive modifications. When he spoke, his voice carried harmonics that resonated directly with her nervous system. Commander Velnash, I'm Captain David Chen, Special Operations. I'll be leading the assault team that penetrates the Final Harvest's core. I understand you're volunteering for the mission. I am. My warriors died to protect life itself. I intend to finish what they started. David nodded approvingly. In that case, you should know what you're really volunteering for. The Final Harvest isn't just a weapon. Our xenoarchaeology teams believe it's based on technology from the predecessors, the species that seeded the galaxy with life in the first place. If the Drakmor succeed in activating it, they won't just be destroying current life. They'll be preventing any new life from ever evolving. The implications hit Kithara like a cold wind. They're trying to become gods, or replace them. The weapon doesn't just destroy biological matter. It rewrites the fundamental constants that allow life to develop. If it fires, this galaxy becomes forever sterile. No evolution, no adaptation, no new species arising from primordial soup. Just endless industrial worlds producing endless copies of Drakmor civilization. Kithara felt the weight of cosmic responsibility settling on her shoulders. What do we need to do to stop it? David activated a personal hologram that showed the final harvest's internal structure. The weapon draws power from a controlled singularity at its core. If we can destabilize the containment field, the resulting collapse will destroy the weapon and everything within a light-year radius. Including us. Including us, David confirmed. But there's something else you should know. The humans you've met, Marcus and Sarah and myself, we're not actually from the original human colonies. Kithara stared at him. What do you mean? We're from Earth itself, the original homeworld, the cradle of all humanoid life in this galaxy. David's expression became something beyond serious. When we detected the Drakmor expansion beginning 3 centuries ago, humanity made a decision. We sent out colony ships to establish outposts throughout the galaxy, but we also began a different kind of preparation. We began preparing to sacrifice the homeworld itself if necessary to preserve life in the cosmos. The truth hit her like a physical blow. Earth is in the core system, hidden behind a perception filter that's kept the Drakmor from detecting it for 300 years. The final harvest is being built in orbit around our birth world. If the weapon activates, Earth dies first. David's voice carried the weight of entire civilizations. So you see, this isn't just a mission to save the galaxy. For humanity, this is a mission to save everything we've ever been and ever could be. As they spoke, klaxons began sounding throughout the station. Through the chamber's transparent walls, Kithara could see the massive coalition fleet beginning to move. Ships from dozens of worlds and hundreds of species, all converging on a single point. All preparing to either save everything or die in the attempt. 18 hours, David said, checking his chronometer. Use that time to say goodbye to whatever you need to say goodbye to. After that, we're all committed to a course that ends with either total victory or total extinction. As Kithara watched the fleet assemble, she thought about her fallen warriors, about her sister fighting on Veltar Prime's surface, about her grandmother's stories of the homeworld that sang life into existence. Tomorrow, she would either help save the galaxy or die in the attempt. But for the first time since the war began, she knew with absolute certainty that they had a chance. Because humanity hadn't just been preparing for war, they'd been preparing to sacrifice everything they held sacred to ensure that life itself would continue. And against that kind of determination, even an empire of devourers didn't stand a chance. The final harvest would fall. She would make sure of it, even if it cost her everything she had left to give, Ursuful to genocidal empires. Alarms began sounding throughout the ship, but they were celebration alarms, not warnings of danger. Through the communication system, a voice announced that the last Drakmor forces had been driven from Veltarian space. The homeworld was free. "Come," Thara said, taking Kithara's hand. "The Council of Species is gathering aboard Haven Station. It's time for you to meet the other survivors and to help us plan the liberation of the galaxy." As they walked toward the docking bay, Kithara realized that everything she had thought she knew about the war was wrong. They hadn't been losing. They hadn't been alone, and they certainly hadn't been outmatched. The Drakmor Empire had been living on borrowed time since the day they first encountered humanity. The question now wasn't whether they would win. The question was whether any Drakmor would survive what humanity was about to unleash upon them. The same insignia Marcus wore on his armor. Cathara's comm unit burst to life with her sister's frantic voice. Kith, unknown ships are engaging the Drakmor fleet. I count over 300 vessels, and they're winning! The Drakmor are retreating! Marcus nodded as if this was exactly what he expected. The Veltarian system is now under Terran Confederation protection. Your people are safe, your worlds will be restored, and your seed vault will help us bring life back to every world the Drakmor have stripped bare. He extended his hand to help her walk. But first, I think you could use some medical attention. We have much to discuss, and I suspect you'll want to meet the other survivors. Other survivors? Did you really think the Veltarians were the only ones we've been helping? Come, Commander. Let me show you what humanity has been building while the galaxy thought we were dead.